and this reminds me of Roya, can you talk about more like the bias and the ethical practices? So for example, what steps can organizations can take to identify and mitigate bias in AI systems? And what does responsible AI look like in practice?
Absolutely, and thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for sharing your evening with us. Regarding the bias in AI, I have worked firsthand on facial recognition for biometric companies in my previous works, and it's a real problem. I think you have all seen people with darker complexion would have essentially AI would react to them adversely in the low illumination, or people with more makeup, or people who are wearing hijab. And a lot of it is simply because a lot of people who are building these models, these are edge cases that are hard to identify. A very interesting use case that I heard about is working with a touch screen, and everybody who worked on the case were male, so nobody thought about people having long nails. They wouldn't be able to unlock their phone, and that's a real problem, so they had to wait for the user to identify the problem. Right now, especially in the case of predictive models, we are in a better place because there are built on essentially systems that we can easily go ahead and identify where are these missing pieces of data and retrain this model because we see them as essentially a cycle. But when we are dealing with large language model or any of these models that require significant amount of data, I think they are a mirror for us to look into this mirror and see what we have built in the history and what we are afraid of. If all of our literature has built upon a lot of misogynistic or racist type of literature, and we leave them to be up there on the internet, and then we train GPT or Gemini or any of these other large language models, we can sit out and say, okay, I can build some guardrail and make sure that these models are not essentially biased because they learned from us. And some of the people who, in my opinion, are afraid of AI taking over, in air quotation, but in my mind, for AI being more used than what we are comfortable with, I think we are fearing what we have essentially built ourselves, and now we are not ready to harvest them. Aside from the reaction of these models to our day-to-day and how much we are utilizing them, there is this other aspect that Nika mentioned about large language model and how much energy they are utilizing. I know in the case of the space station, we are limited and constrained from energy perspective for the situation. But when we are living on a planet Earth, we still need to be wary of how much energy we are utilizing for the time of training and also for the time of inference. Some of the major players right now, they are building power plants to be able to essentially feed their training system. We have companies building nuclear system to be able to train, like essentially have the power for these GPUs. And these are just what is happening within the United States. I'm a believer in climate change. I don't know, I hope everybody else in the room also believe in that. Scientifically, it's been proven. The amount of energy we put in these machines, these are databases and computes that take so much energy, and their impact is not just within the US or the Western community. We have people in other less developed parts of the world who are paying the price for us wanting to use the bigger GPT or the larger model simply because they can solve a lot of the solutions, some of the problems we have. I think to the point that you made earlier, for a lot of these use cases, we need to look into distilling this model because all these large language models and larger and bigger and more parameter is not the answer. Sometimes we need to go smaller because we don't want to just torch this planet and go to Mars and start a new colony.